For most people, it's easier to tear down the biggest building in town than it is to build a taller one. Because a taller one takes more sophistication, takes more time, takes more skill. Most people are not willing to go through that process. So that's fine. I do not live based upon people saying certain things and make me excited and giving away my control of my power. I ain't doing that so that people can like me? I'd much rather be celebrated by the few than being tolerated by the most.
Welcome to the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast, the ultimate destination for accredited investors and entrepreneurs seeking alternative wealth-building strategies. Discover how to fast-track your journey to wealth and time freedom by thinking outside the box. If you're ready to join the ranks of the Contrarian Capitalists and learn the most effective ways to reach your financial goals faster, you're in the right place. Let's get started with today's episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast.
Favorite silverback, Sylvania Harrod, coming back to you on another episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast. So in today's moment, what's really sitting in my head right now, I wanted to talk about long-term versus short-term wealth. This was something that was very apparent to me when I was talking to my mentor earlier this week. We were talking about just consistencies, because in the world of private equity, there's a few fundamental things that you do. You're either in the mergers and acquisition space, you're in the real estate space, you can be in you have like hedge funds and these different groups of funds, which I'll talk about at a later time. But the key thing is there's always this balance between long-term and short-term. And I like to think of it more of like fitness. You know, in the short term, you don't really see a lot of results in between. Like when you go ahead and you go to the gym one time, it's not really going to be there. It's in that consistency of a marathon that you really start seeing results. So if you look at something, you take a picture today, you may not notice too many things, but you take a picture every single day for about 3 months and you had consistent eating, you had consistent movement, you're going to notice a difference. It's going to be clear and obvious there. So how does that go to wealth generation? So there's two main levers that create different types of wealth. And when I talk about wealth to me, there's a formula, which I'll describe in a later episode, but just to give you a little bit of understanding, you hear this word wealth being thrown around. Wealth is really a time machine. That's all it really is. As you have more of it, you can be able to utilize it to buy back your time and really unlock your freedom. And as you're unlocking, you get different tiers. So maybe your first generation of wealth is going and be like, you know what? I get paid more from my assets than I do my liabilities. Now, for those of you that are newer, an asset is just something that will go ahead and give off cash flow. A liability is something that takes away cash flow. So if we look at, you hear it a lot in the space of people being on talk about like buying a home is the key to unlocking wealth. That's always a contentious topic. People will go about like, don't buy a home, don't rent, buy a home, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I'm here to tell you. You buy what makes sense to you. For me personally, I will own a home. Why do I want to own a home? Because at the end of the day, there's a certain amount of shelter that I have. I know that I have 4 key principles in life, like it's like love where you live is kind of key number 1, right? If you don't like where you live, it changes everything. Your environment creates who you are. So if you don't love where you live and you're not inspired by where you live, it's not going to be a fun ride. If you don't love who you're with, oh my goodness, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be one hell of a ride. If you're with a partner that you have a certain level of distrust. I always relate it to Barry Sanders in the 90s. Every time he got a ball snap, there was 4 defenders in the backfield with him, and he had to make him shift. He ran more yards behind the line of scrimmage than he did in front of the line of scrimmage, kind of thing. Then you can go to a place of so if you love where you live, you love who you're with. Third piece is love what you do. If you love what you do, then it becomes a really fun adventure because it's a marathon. The reality is no matter what, this fantasization, I don't even know if that's a word, but I'm going to keep it like it is. Like people love to fantasize about one day I'm going to be old and I'm going to save up all my money so I can do what I really want. And then that day, all I'm doing is taking all that money and pouring it back into my health because I sacrificed it over the last 50 years. I don't know about you, but that math doesn't math. So if you love what you do, then it's just a journey. There's different tiers. For me, I love being in the sport of business. It's always fascinated me because as I've learned that this sport is a full contact sport. There are going to be different moments. You're going to have days where you're sitting there and you're frustrated. That's okay. That's part of what happens. That's why entrepreneurs are different. We're willing to embrace those things, live in a space of ambiguity, get to clarification, ask questions, be curious, and so on and so forth. So number three, like love what you're doing. And number four, I would say is the foundation that set all the other three possible, which is love who you are. Because without number four, all the other three become irrelevant. That's kind of the greatest gift of life, is being at a place where you're just like, I'm just comfortable with me, that whatever else happens is not really going to change that variable. Because here's the thing, same people that will celebrate you will also talk crap about you. Have you ever noticed in humanity, when an underdog wins the first time, everybody's happy for them? But when the underdog consistently keeps winning, everybody wants to see their fall. Why is that? It's because for most people, it's easier to tear down the biggest building in town than it is to build a taller one. Because a taller one takes more sophistication. It takes more time. It takes more skill. And most people are not willing to go through that process. So that's fine. I do not live based upon people saying certain things and make me excited and giving away my control of my power. I ain't doing that. Did it for too long. So that people can like me? Cool. I'd much rather be celebrated by the few than being tolerated by the most. So, yeah, those four fundamentals, you're kind of good. I know it's a little bit of an ADHD moment, but let's get back to what I was talking about long-term or short-term. So if we look at short-term, there's a reason why tax codes exist. Ordinary income is taxed at a higher rate than long-term income. Why is that? That is because we are incentivized to build long-term things. Long-term things will kick off depreciation. While it does appreciate over time, it'll have expenses. It'll have long-term type consequences. So let's just use something like one of my favorites, which is like commercial real estate. We're going to look at something called mixed-use commercial. So being that I'm a CrossFitter, you see this a lot with CrossFitters. They'll go and they're in a place and they have like a warehouse or something to be able to be there that they get to control. They're going to do all the decorating inside. They're going to do all the construction inside. I like it because of my personality. My personality is, while I have a love and affinity for people, I don't really see myself in the customer service business where somebody's griping to me about a $12 piece of equipment every single month. I'm not built for that, because I'd just be like, it's just stupid. It's $12. Just replace it. Like if you're griping because my toilet's leaking, fix it. Cool. I can send somebody there. Did you file a thing? You just learn over time. Like that's not something that I am designed to do, because it takes a very special person with a certain level of like empathy and compassion to want to play in that game. That's just not me. That's why I love those type of businesses, because the tenant pays for all those things, and I hear from them once every couple of years. Why? So I can maximize my time and do it in things where I'm able to pour into other people and have those level of conversations. Pour into the leadership team that's going to be able to develop, because I always look at like, what's my long-term goal? What am I looking to do? I'm looking to build a world where I equip leaders all across the globe to go ahead and show up and be themselves and do things of their own accord, and be able to create community that's based upon humility, transparency, empathy, connection, yada, yada, yada. But there's different phases of it. So on a higher scale, I do much better with people that are very competent. On a lower scale, that's not my jam. So I bring in other people who it is their jam, because I realize I'm not a fresh slice for everybody, and that's okay. But I am going to love on people and go through that process. And my dad was a Marine. That's what I was raised with. And I've learned to evolve and get tender. That's why I think that the Lord blessed me with daughters. But let's look at that. That is long-term wealth. So most of the people that are on the interwebs teaching to you about like, get up, go do this method and that method, blah, blah, blah. Great. Does it fit your personality? Because if you're going into the world of real estate investing, expecting to have great returns, you have to understand what type of car you're driving. If you're in a pickup truck expecting to win an F1 race, you're going to have a hell of a time keeping up because the odds are not in your favor. So when you pick that long-term strategy, you have to be real with yourself and realize like this is a long-term. I'm looking to get depreciation. I'm looking to have pay down. I'm looking to make sure that I have these type of options readily available to me because the game is called income zero. The objective is if you have enough depreciating assets, it will offset your cash flow that you're generating so you can create balance in what you're looking to do. So how is that made possible? Short-term wealth is generated through companies. If you look at the long-term wealth, if I go ahead and I buy a 100-unit apartment building, I cannot add 300 more doors to that door. There's a lot of different things you're going to get, but eventually there's only so much leverage you can put onto that house of cards before it collapses. Versus if I buy a business and I'm, let's say, pest control, I can go get more customers. I can get more routes. I can pay more in ads. I can acquire more customers because now in that 100-door unit, there's only so much I can do to maximize that asset, which is why it's long term. But in the short term, I can go ahead and I can buy 15, 20 companies. And there's really no ceiling other than locality. And so I can go buy those different units and I'm able to really go and build that opportunity. Because if I go and buy, here's a quick fact that you'll learn. Everything in the world of like mergers and acquisitions, there's a couple key factors that happens to drive that. One of those is the it's called, I call it the exit factor. You know, like what is the multiple I can apply to a company's profitability, and the multiple grows the more of that asset that you have. So if I was going to go sell, let's just say I had a pest control company, using round numbers, these aren't exact. Do not follow this to be able to be there. I'm just giving you for example purposes. So I go in, I get a pest control company. It's doing 5 million top line, 1 million in net profit. Looking at regular multiples, that multiple is going to be a 4x multiple. Okay. So that means that company is worth $4 million. Now, if me as one person happens to go sell it, cool. That's 4 mil. It's going to sit in the bank, be able to be there. Hopefully I can 1031 exchange it, offset it with some of the long-term strategies, park it in real estate. That's what you do. You make your money and you park it in real estate because of the depreciation that you're going to be able to receive and the offsets for income zero. Great. Now, let's just say I did the same process, but instead of buying one company, I'm going to buy 10 companies. So I'm buying 50 million in revenue, 10 million in profit. More than likely, there are consistent costs that can be removed once I own 10 of them. The moment I close the deal, it goes from a 4x multiple to an 8x multiple, which means my acquisition that I just did, I just doubled my money just by bringing them all together. So then once I throw in cost efficiencies, I pour a little gasoline on the fire called ads to be able to be there, I can increase the profitability of that same company that I bought for 50 million to, let's say, 20 million in profit. That 20 million in profit is not an 8x multiple. So I spent 50, but I can sell for 160. Minus the cost that I had and the cost of capital and what I need to be able to return. Congratulations. Now, instead of walking away with a $4 million paycheck, like that one gentleman, I'm now walking away with a $90 million paycheck. Same game, just playing it in different scale. So when we look at opportunities and we look at things there, I always look at it as like, we're going to identify it as long-term, short-term. There are short-term and long-term opportunities in pretty much anything that happens to be there. You know, the long-term opportunity would be building a business and growing it from start and being able to build it up and yada, yada, yada. There's ways that you can be able to do it and offset depending on the asset you're buying. I'm not an accountant, not a tax lawyer, so I'm just giving you rough guesstimates of what you can find on the interwebs, right? So that's an option for you. Or what you can do is you can invest and have a balanced portfolio between short-term and long-term investments. It gives you great opportunity. Warren Buffett always talks about the reason why he buys stocks is because he buys companies. That's his way of getting a seat at the table for these different companies. And eventually he buys more and more of a company, and then he can become a majority shareholder in different elements. Same game. So my objective is to give you access to these different sophisticated deals and just taking very complex subjects and making them simple and easy to consume. All you really have to think about is, okay, who am I? What's my personality? And then we start aligning different assets that align with your personality. And it's much easier to do things that you actually thoroughly enjoy. Because in some situations, maybe that property you bought doesn't have to have all these crazy details. But if you're going to get experience out of it and you're going to get usage out of it and your family can apply it, then hell, that makes more sense than enough. Because what's the return on investment on investing in your family, in your mental health, in something that you love and enjoy? Cool. I'm a car guy, guys. If you talk about buying dumb assets, that is the number one dumb asset you can possibly buy is cars. Because they're going to depreciate every single time, and you pour more money into it just for it to go down. But there's no cost on experience of when you start a car, when you drive a car, when you feel it going through the hills, when you get to wash the car and spend time with that. That's because it's just a labor of love. So some do appreciate over time, but they're like super rare, and that's just a different personality to be able to handle that. But I'm going to land the plane today and just make sure that we talk about, you hear me mention like long-term, short-term, give you the fundamentals of what that actually means. As always, if you have more things that you want me to dig into or be able to drive, you can find me on all of the social media platforms at Sylvania Harrod. You can see it spelled like it is in the bottom of this video. If you're listening to it, it's just Pennsylvania without the pen, Harrod like Harrods of London, and we're good to go. I appreciate you for taking the time to listen to this. I hope this was a meaningful conversation for you. And as always, stay grateful. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more people ready to explore contrarian investment strategies. Stay connected with us on social media for more expert insights, behind-the-scenes content, and updates on upcoming episodes. You can find all the links in the show notes. Until next time, stay bold, think differently, and keep pursuing the legacy you deserve. Thanks for listening to the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast.